3 seasons of build-up. 1 demand for a duel. 0 swings of his sword. Criston Cole didn't lose the fight of his life. He never got one. And that refusal, the show flatly denying him the ending he spent years chasing, is a far more brutal statement than any battle could have been. If you watched the episode, you already know Cole is dead. You know Rhaenyra bled on the Iron Throne. You know the small folk are organizing in the dark. This isn't a recap of any of that. This is about why the show built Cole's ending this specific way instead of the duel he begged for. Why the Iron Throne chose this exact moment, a queen dismissing hungry citizens to draw blood. And why an insurgency with no leader and no name might be the single most dangerous force in this entire war. 3 separate scenes, 1 underlying idea connecting all of them. Let's take it apart properly. To understand why Cole's death lands the way it does, you need to understand exactly what he's been chasing. Cole isn't fighting for land or gold or even really for Aegon anymore. He's fighting for a legacy he was never supposed to be allowed to have. A steward's son who clawed his way into the White Cloaks, into kingmaking, into the history books, and who has spent this entire war terrified of being remembered as nothing more than a servant who got lucky. In the episode right before this one, he says it outright. He refuses to let highborn lords diminish him again, and he vows to die clear-eyed, unbent, and glorious in battle. A song, not a footnote. Watch the way he fights in this episode's opening skirmish. He pulls out a Morning Star, the exact weapon he used to beat Daemon Targaryen in single combat, back in the show's very first episode. That's not a random equipment choice. That's the show deliberately bookending his entire journey, letting him relive his greatest victory one last time, cutting down over a dozen men, shouting his house words like he's already writing his own legend in real time. Which makes what happens next so much crueler, because that victory was never real. It was bait. Here's the detail that recap videos skip past in about 10 seconds, and it's actually the whole engine of the scene. The camp Cole and his men stumble into looks abandoned. Sagging tents, dying fires, bodies scattered in the grass. It's staged. The corpses are rivermen playing dead, waiting for exactly the moment Cole lets his guard down. When they rise with drawn steel, it looks like chaos. It isn't. It's a calculated bleed, designed specifically to whittle Cole's force down from a real army to a dozen exhausted survivors before the actual trap even shows itself. Then the horns sound, and Tully and Roddy the Ruin's winter wolves emerge from the tree line and close the circle completely. Cole doesn't lose because he's a lesser fighter than everyone he's faced all series. He loses because for the first time, someone deliberately built the entire battlefield around denying him the thing he's best at, being the most dangerous man in a fair fight. This was never going to be a fair fight. That was the design. So Cole does what any cornered legend does next. He tries to negotiate his way into dignity. Watch how fast that gets taken away too. Cole offers Tully something that should, by every rule of Westerosi chivalry, be respected. His own life, in exchange for his remaining men walking free. It's the kind of gesture that wins a man a measure of grace even from his enemies. Tully refuses instantly. No negotiation, no counteroffer, just a promise he made to the dead that he'd build a sept out of traitors' bones. That single line matters more than it sounds like it should, because it tells you Tully isn't improvising his cruelty in the moment. He planned this response before Cole ever opened his mouth. This isn't rage, it's policy. And that's the second door slamming shut on Cole's ending. He wanted a warrior's exit. He was offered none of the usual outs, not surrender, not ransom, not even the small mercy of his men's lives. Every conventional path to a dignified death has just been sealed off, one at a time, before he swung a single blow. Which leaves him only one card left to play. The one thing he's actually good at. This is the moment the entire episode has been building toward, and it's over in about 4 seconds. Cole demands single combat, not against one man, but 2, Tully and Roddy the Ruin together. 1 blade against 2, betting everything on the one skill that's carried him his entire life. It's audacious. It's exactly the kind of impossible odds heroics that turns a man into a legend in the songs he's always wanted written about him. Tully says no, doesn't even dignify it with an insult. And before Cole can draw his sword, before he can do the one thing this entire scene has been engineered around, 3 arrows hit him at once. Belly, chest, throat. Shot from a distance by Black Alley Blackwood, a woman he's probably never even spoken a full sentence to in this entire war. Think about what that actually is, structurally. This isn't a death in battle. It's an execution disguised as a battlefield. The show spent 3 full seasons carefully building Cole into a man obsessed with dying like a legend. And then in the one moment that mattered most, it refused to let him. No duel, no last stand, no witnesses close enough to tell the story the way he wanted it told. Just an arrow from someone he never even got to face. This also isn't the writer's improvising cruelty for shock value. Back in Season 2, Lord Gunthor Darkland tells Cole almost exactly what's coming, that his own fate will come in kind. This entire death sequence is a promise the show made years ago, quietly, and is only now cashing in. Cole spent his life inflicting exactly this kind of unglamorous, undignified violence on other people. The story simply waited until it was his turn to receive it. And 2 scenes later, King's Landing hands you the exact same idea, aimed at someone who thinks she's already won. Watch where this cut actually happens, because the placement is the whole argument. Rhaenyra is sitting the Iron Throne, hearing petitions from small folk, people reporting missing silent sisters, people describing real hunger in a city she's supposed to be governing. She's impatient. She shifts in her seat, and the throne opens her hand. In this universe, that's never just an accident or a prop malfunction. The Iron Throne has drawn blood from unworthy rulers before. Maegor the Cruel, Viserys the First, and every time it's been read as the same warning. This seat rejects whoever sits on it dishonestly. The timing here isn't subtle. Rhaenyra isn't cut while leading troops, or facing Ormond, or grieving her son. She's cut mid-sentence, while brushing off her own hungry citizens like an inconvenience. Put that next to Criston Cole bleeding out in a forest a few scenes earlier, and the show is making the exact same argument twice in one episode, from 2 completely different angles. Cole wanted to be remembered as a legend, and was denied that story by the people he'd hurt. Rhaenyra wants to be remembered as a just queen, while quietly becoming exactly the kind of ruler who stops listening to the people she governs. And the throne itself is the one calling her on it. Neither of them gets to write their own myth anymore. The war is taking that privilege away from everyone, one scene at a time. Now here's the piece that ties the entire episode together, and it's the one most breakdowns treat as a throwaway subplot. Daemon disguises himself as an ordinary gold cloak to walk the streets and investigate the wave of assassinations gutting the city watch. He gets ambushed in an alley, standard for this show. But what the attacker tells him before dying is the actual point of the scene. This isn't one organized cell working for Ormond Hightower. It's small folk, angry, unpaid for, organizing themselves with no banners, no sigils, no single leader to capture or kill. Cut one down, and someone else simply steps into the gap. That structure is the nightmare scenario for someone like Rhaenyra, who spent her entire reign thinking about this war in terms of individual enemies, Aemond, Ormond, a specific traitor to be found and punished. You cannot behead a movement that never had a head to begin with. And it's not coming from some far-off battlefield. It's coming from inside her own capital, born directly out of an empty treasury and unpaid guards she stopped taking seriously. Line that up against everything else in this episode. Cole is denied his myth by 2 named, singular enemies with a battle plan. Rhaenyra is warned by an object, a throne, that doesn't negotiate or explain itself. And now the capital itself is turning against her, not through one villain she can identify and kill, but through hundreds of ordinary people who don't need a leader to keep hurting her. 3 completely different scenes. The same verdict, delivered 3 separate ways. Nobody in this war gets to control their own story anymore, and the people with the least power are quietly becoming the hardest enemy to defeat. So why was Criston Cole really denied a hero's death? Not because the writers wanted a shot kill. Because this entire episode is built around the same brutal idea, told 3 different ways. Glory is a story people tell about themselves, and this war has stopped letting anyone write their own. Cole wanted a duel and got 3 arrows from a stranger. Rhaenyra wanted to be remembered as just and got cut by the one object in Westeros that doesn't lie. And the small folk, who were never supposed to be main characters in anyone's story at all, are quietly becoming the only force in this war that can't be stopped by killing a single enemy. That's not 3 separate plot lines. That's the entire thesis of Faceless Men hiding in plain sight. Here's what I want to know. Do you think Corlys Velaryon actually dies on that dock? Or do you think Ormond's men are taking the sea snake hostage to use against Rhaenyra later? Tell me your theory in the comments. If enough of you want it, that ambush is getting its own full breakdown next. And if you haven't seen it yet, we already broke down what Ormond Hightower was really doing behind the scenes. Just 1 episode before this one. Links right here. Same war, same mastermind, 1 episode earlier. Watch that next.